G'day Internet, welcome back to Wheelwork. Hope everything is going well. Today Jason and I have come in on our day off. Well, I haven't come in because I live here, but Jason's come in and we're going to knock out a bit more work on the Calais. And today is the day that we finally sort out the damaged suspension and stuff in this car. Before I start this video, I want to do a massive shout out to Pedders in Dandenong. They have actually sponsored all of the brand new parts that are going into this car to repair the suspension, including some upgrades, even things that don't really need to be done, that are common for going on these things. They've provided us with some parts for that. So massive thank you to Lance, to Dave, to Bryce, to Phil, and to Jose at Pedders in Dandenong. I really appreciate it. I've been dealing with those guys for about 15-20 years. Formed a very good relationship with them, and when I told them what we're doing with this, they were happy to come to the party. So that's it. I'll show you what we're doing and what we're not doing, and yeah, we'll just get into it. Hi, Jason. Alrighty, so what we are going to be doing, we have a plethora of parts, thanks to Pedders. So we have a pair of rebuilt lower control arms. We do know our left one is stuffed in this thing. It's quite broken. So we've got a pair of rebuilt ones. They've been cleaned up, painted. They've got new pivot bushes, new caster bushes, and new ball joints. Got a set of Pedders Nolithane front caster bushes, which go there. We've got a pair of new front sway bar links in heavy duty with Nolithane bushes as well, because we do know the passenger side one is bent. We've got a couple of road safe rack ends. We have a brand new Pedders heavy duty steering rack. We've also got a couple of second-hand parts that Jason's brought in. Don't know if the strut is bent on this car or not. I'm sort of hoping it isn't, because it does have Munro GTs in it, which have been replaced at some stage. But if it is bent, we've got a new one. We've got a front cast rod because that is also bent. And we've got a front knuckle just in case our one is damaged. On top of that, we also have some brake parts that we're going to do, because these front brakes are cooked. There is almost no pad left. So I have ordered some Bendix heavy duty pads. You know, I like my heavy duty pads. And these things I've actually had sitting on my shelf for quite a while. So wrapped up in newspaper here is some front braided brake lines. And we've also got some slotted front brake rotors. So we'll throw them on at the same time. As I said, they've been sitting around for quite a while. So that's that. So what we're basically gonna do now is get into it. We'll blow this side all apart because we do need to repair the K-frame. So that basically involves, I need to gain some access into here. So the best way to do that is we're gonna change the rack. This rack is stuffed, it's leaking quite badly. And you know, the rack boots are torn. So we'll go through and knock this out, just undo those pins, the nut. And there's a couple of lines up in there that we've got to undo. So we'll go through, get all that out of the way, get the rack off. We already have sucked what was left of the power steering fluid out of the reservoir. So yeah, let's get into it. Well, we're actually going to start back here. There's just one thing for now that I want to do to the rear suspension. There will be other things down the track, but I'm actually going to change these bushes in here. These are called the diff cradle bushes, very common for failing. And what actually happens is when you accelerate, if I can get the light in there, see that lifting in there? They tear the center out of this bush. If I actually do a bit of a wide shot, you can actually see the whole rear of the car's moving, including the exhaust as I prime it. And when you accelerate hard, the K-frame ends up hitting the bottom of the floor. And it's not really very good for when you're sliding the thing around. You want it as controllable as possible. So Pedders do an upgraded bush, which is made from Nolithane, and it is a solid bush, which is much better. So to get these out, what you need to do is undo this 18mm bolt in the middle. If you have the joy of ever doing these yourself, you will learn what frustration is in regards to how tight that bolt is. It has a lot of Loctite on it from the factory, and it is super tight. You have to break it through. You usually have to break it free with a pry bar with like a pipe on the end of it. But anyway, you get that out, and then you undo these three around the outside, and then this plate gets removed, and then in these voids you can just pry the bush out. So I'll just get to getting, so you do one side at a time. So I'm going to get this side apart, and when I got the bush out, I'll show you the difference. Boom, so that side's all out, all apart. I'll show you what it looks like. So this is the old bush here. From factory they have this semi-void, and they just start cracking and spreading through there. So you can see this one being solid Nolithane. Quite a bit of an upgrade. So we just put some lubricant around the outside, and then you push this through just with your hand, and then this piece sits on top, just sort of like that, and sandwiches in between the K-frame then we just put it all back together. So we'll blast all this in. I'll show you what it looks like when it's done. Sick. They're both in. All tight, all done. So that is job number 1 of suspension complete. Now onto the main event. Yeah, this is where we're up to. We've got the old steering rack out. Jason's just giving a bit of a clean to get rid of all of that sin. We've also sort of bounced onto the brakes a little bit. Decided to paint the brake calipers red because it's going to give the car more power. So we've done that, and yeah, we also painted the disc and the backing plate and the rubbers and the bleeder, you know, just for extra power. Yeah, all that stuff's going to replace anyway. We've put the braided hoses on the front brakes as well, and we've pushed the pistons back in the caliper. So that's all good, just needs to be bled. So what we're going to do now is start working on this in here, this damage that's up in this area. So I want to try and straighten that, prep it all, and I'll show you how we're going to go about repairing it. So I've got this arm dropped down, and you can sort of really see now how bad it was. It's elongated that hole quite a bit. There's high and low spots in there. So the challenge now is to try and flatten that out as much as I can. I've got Jason to bring in a second-hand lower arm as well, even though we've got new ones, which is this one there. And what we're going to do once I sort of flatten this out, I'll actually put the lower arm, the second-hand arm in there, and I'm going to get I've got a couple of big panel washers and a new bolt, so I'm just going to grind all the paint off all of this stuff. Once this is all flattened out, I'll put the second-hand arm in there with the new bolt and the panel washers, and then I'm going to weld the big panel washers onto this front and back on both sides, which will probably end up melting the bush, which is why I want to do it with the second-hand arm, and then we can pull it all out and put the new stuff in. All right, so after much heating up of the metal and banging and carrying on, this is how we've got it. And I've just gone in with my little sander and prep the surface. So that's how it looks. So we're going to stick the old arm back in there now, put the bolt through it, tighten it up. And what I'm doing is I've got these stainless steel panel washers, which I'm going to double up each side, put it in, tighten it up. I'm going to weld all of this up and then pull the bolt back out and pull the old arm back out. So I'll do that now. Rightio, so that's all welded in. Laying dimes, not really. So we'll let it cool off a bit. We'll pull that bolt out, pull the arm out, clean it up, give it a squirt with black paint, and then we can start the reassembly process. Sick, that's all done. Giving it a quick squirt of paint. Pretty happy with how that's all turned out, to be honest. So now I am going to get the steering rack back in it, the new rack. And we'll get that sorted, and then we'll go about pulling all the rest of this stuff out and changing over everything we need to. All right, a little bit of an update. Haven't put the rack in yet, but we've got this side all back together. So I've got the new lower arm in, got the sway bar link on, and we threw the new strut bolts in just because we had them. Got the slotted rotor on there, and the new pads are in it. So this side is pretty much all complete. I've just got to do that bush, which I'll do once we finish off this side. I've still got the nut off that one. I'm not going to put that back on until we do that bush, but we've got the second-hand Z-bar in. The new lower arm is in this side as well, and we've just sort of loosely set the strut bolts in there. And unfortunately, it still does look like this hub is leaning over, or this, yeah, so it's not looking great. So my money is on, it has been a strut, considering that's new. We've changed the knuckle with the second-hand one that Jace brought. So the only thing that's left that it could be is the strut. So we'll drop it down a little bit now, get that strut out and put that second-hand one in. Yeah, so we'll just get into that. And if that sort of straightens this wheel up a little bit and we're happy with it, then we can go through and put the steering rack in as well. Alrighty, bit of an update. Got the second-hand strut in and she is sitting straight. So we're happy with that. So we went ahead and put all of this side back together. The new strut bolts are in, the sway bar links in, brakes in. We've greased up the slides. People, grease up your slides, please. Please, thank you. So that is all looking great. So now all that's left is we'll throw the new steering rack in. Once that's in, we'll drop it down, fill it up with fluid and go through the bleeding process. of getting the air out of the power steering system, and then we'll do those front Castor bushes. So yeah, we are almost there. Rightio, as for the back brakes, we're just going to check them. Checked. Yep, it has brakes. The discs aren't too bad, they're not scored. There's no lip on the edge of them. They've just got a little bit of surface thrust on them because it has been sitting around for a while, but not really going to do too much with them. It's got plenty of pad left in it, which is good. It did take a pad out and have a look. It is actually got Bendix pads in the back, so that's all right, and they don't look that old. But I just took the caliper off mainly because I just want to grease the slides, which I've just done. So I'm just going to do that both sides and then bleed up the brakes on the rear as well, obviously. So one other thing we're going to do as far as brakes goes is we're going to replace the rear brake line, the hard line from the master cylinder to the ABS module. We're going to replace it with this guy. This is something I've had sitting around for ages. Oh, it's made in spaghetti. So basically this is the rear brake line port here, which goes to the ABS module. And basically you just replace it with this. So this has got like a tap in it. So when it's on open like that, you've got back brakes. And then you can shut it off like that, and then no more back brakes for all the skid goodness. So just going to throw this on now quickly, and then we'll bleed up the brakes as well. And just like that, it's in. Super, super simple. Back brakes on, back brakes off, back brakes on, back brakes off. We will keep them on for now for bleeding purposes. So yeah, that's that. My OCD got the better of me. While I had the back wheels off to bleed up the back brakes, I also ended up painting the rear calipers to match the front. Damn you, OCD. Oh well. All right, seems we've done a thing. We are all done under here as far as this stuff goes, with the exception of the Castor bushes. I've still got to do them. But the rack's in, fittings are tight, lower arms are in, tie rod ends are in, sway bar links are on. Oh, there is actually one more thing I wanted to do. I will get back to that. Yeah, so that's all looking good. All the brakes are on. Slotted rotors. Lines. This is what they look like through the wheels. So yeah, we'll drop it down now and bleed up the power steering system. Bleed up the power steering. What you want to do is fill the thing up. You have a full line on the side here. So these just run Dextron 3 power steering fluid. Fill it up, you start up the car, and then you want to several times turn the steering wheel left to right, and it will end up aerating the fluid. As you turn the steering wheel left to right to open the pressure relief valve to pump all the fluid through the system. And then what you want to do is the next day, once all the air settles, you just want to recheck your level. So we'll go through, fill it and bleed it up. The last thing front suspension related that we're going to do for now is go ahead and change these front Castor bushes. As I said earlier, they don't look too bad, although this one is a little bit compressed at the top because of the damage to the suspension. But we have new ones provided by Petters and Nolithane. They were nice enough to do that, and these are common for Phalanx, so we're going to go ahead and change them anyway because we've got them. To remove them is pretty simple. It's just a 24mm nut on the front of them. I've taken the one off the other side as well. And then you've got 4 30mm nuts around the outside, around the outside, around the outside. And then you'll notice on the back of it, there's like these shims. So when you buy a kit that comes with 6 shims, so 3 per side. You've got an 8mm, a 4mm and a 2mm. And what those shims basically do is set your Castor level. If you don't know what Castor is how forward or back in the wheel arch the wheel sits. And we're actually going to set it so it's slightly more forward than factory. And what that will do is when you're sideways or whatever steering, it'll help the steering to self-center a lot quicker. So help that steering will snap back to center quicker. And we're also going to change how we orientate the washers as well, to give a little bit of better pedal feel. So before I show you what we're doing though, we are going to change alignment settings on this a bit. So not only are we going to give it a little bit more Castor, we're going to change the toe as well. So toe is adjusted by the tie rod ends as to how much toe in and toe out they run. So basically toe is, if you imagine the wheel, that's toe in and that's toe out. So standard, these run a little bit of toe in. And when you start driving, as the wheel goes back a little bit, it'll straighten up. But we're actually going to give this thing pretty much 0 toe. And all that'll do is help it turn in quicker when we're on the track doing shenanigans. And we're also going to run a little bit more camber as well. So these things run about 1/2 degree of camber factory. Camber is how much the wheel leans over, sort of like that. So they run 1/2 degree negative camber. We're going to try and run about 1.5 to 2 degrees. So that'll also help with cornering as well. So that's the plan. As for the bushes, the Castor bushes, these are the new ones that we're running here. So these, as I said, these are Petters Nolithane. That's the back of the bush, that's the front. This is how I've laid out the washers. I've just gotten off the phone with Petters and discussed with them how we're going to do it. So that's basically the passenger side, that's the driver's side. So that's going to push the left front wheel forward a fair bit more and the driver's side one a little bit more. You always want your left front running a little bit more Castor than your right. It just helps with wheel alignment and how the car behaves and drives. Not only that, this is the old washer we took off the front. So there's the new one there that would normally go on the front. We're actually going to swap that around and put those on the back. And then this concave this concave washer, which normally goes on the front like that. Petters classify that as a comfort setting. And then you've got a sports setting. If you just spin that around, it cups that bush a fair bit more and just helps it to not compress as much when you brake. So that'll help give a bit better pedal feel as well. So we're going to do that as well, run it that way. So that's basically all of that. So I'm going to go through and get all of these old ones out and remove all of the old washers, and I'll just show you what it looks like with it all pulled apart. Alrighty, so I got all the old bushes and washers and spacers out. So that's basically how it all looks all pulled apart. So now it's just a matter of going through and laying all of this stuff in. Well, there's the old stuff. Going through and laying all of this stuff in each side. And yeah, just putting it back together. We will put a little bit of this sort of lube on the inside of the ferrule, that's called a ferrule. And also on the front and rear where the big washers are going to go. So we're all in, all done. So front suspension is officially finished for now. What I've done is the spacers that I didn't use, I've just put them in between the nut and the front plate, just so everything's still kept all grouped together. That way it's got the same thread engagement both sides, and when it goes from the alignment, if they need to pull the spacers out and rejig things, they can. So this should hopefully get it pretty close for now, but I don't know how far off it is because of how whack this wheel was. But anyway, that is all done for now. Now, the other thing I want to do, as I mentioned sort of before, there was something I forgot about with the steering rack. There is something I wanted to do before I put it in, and I'm actually going to go ahead and do it now. I'm going to drop the tie rod ends off again and also remove the rack boots because I'm going to fit this. This is something that I have also had for a little while. These are steering rack spacers, and these go on between the rack end and the rack, which is in here, but I'll get sort of all of this off and I'll show you where they go. And what that does is it gives you, they claim to give you about 20% more steering lock. So when you're sort of sliding around sideways, you can get the car a bit more sideways and catch it to bring it back with more lock. Whether they work or not, I don't know, but I've got them, so I'm going to put them in before the car gets aligned. Now, I've just got the rack ends sort of ready to go. I've just taken the tie rod ends off and the steering rack boots. So now we just unscrew the rack ends from there and there. These ones are good because they've actually got flats in them. The factory ones are all round, so trying to unscrew them is always a mission. And then we'll slip those spacers on with heaps of Loctite and put it back together. Cool. They're both in. Used heaps of Loctite just to be sure. So they're probably never going to come out ever again. So now it's just a matter of slapping it all back together. Oh, all back together. No one will ever know. So all I've done just to get the car down the road for an alignment is I've just run a string sort of from the back edge of the tyre through the front edge of the tyre, through the back edge of the front tyre, through the front edge of the front tyre, and just sort of lined it up so both the front edge of the tyre and the back edge of the tyre are touching the string at the same time. So that will be good enough to get it down the road for the alignment. So now I need to organise an unregistered vehicle permit for it to get it down for an alignment. Just thought I'd show you actually with those rack spacers in, how much lock this thing's got now. So that's actually quite a considerable amount. Go back the other way. And that's how we are for left hand down. Thanks heaps for joining us on this episode, guys. We put in a big day on this thing and got quite a lot done. So that basically finishes off brakes, steering and suspension side of things. For now, there are some other things we want to do down the track, some of which you'll see in the next couple of episodes, some of which will be a bit later on. But anyway, thank you so much for tuning in. We always appreciate the support. If you want to see more, please remember to like and subscribe. Be safe, be happy, and we will catch you in the next episode. See you guys.